Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 26 mini-series with the Los Angeles Angels. And we are about midway through our first season with the Angels. It is not going well on the field. Our 35-58 record has us last place in the American League West. When we took a look at this roster, when we got started a couple of months ago in Game Time, 63-win team a year ago. We're on pace to be slightly better than that, but not much better. Not a ton of talent here, and we have traded away a few veterans at this point to try to get some contracts off our books and or bring in a little bit of younger talent into the organization. But quite honestly, we don't have anyone who's incredibly valuable as far as our veterans, which makes it a little more difficult to fix this roster. But we also didn't spend a lot of time thinking about fixing the roster, quite honestly. I've mentioned this before for those of you who have followed some of our series over the years, but when I take over a team in the late winter or the spring, right before the season gets underway, I generally just want to get through that first season as quickly as possible and get to the first off season where I can really make the changes or start making the changes that I'd like to make to the organization and its roster. So I admit the roster's not that good. Could have made it better if I had spent more time with it, but just kind of want to get to that first full off season. We'll also be turning over a lot of the personnel in the coaching staff this coming November, hopefully. And then start positioning this team to hopefully have significantly more success going forward. And speaking about success going forward, this episode is going to focus on the draft. And I will start off by saying this in OOTP 26. I really do like this new Draft Central. It puts a lot of the information that you care about on one page right in front of you, so you're not flipping back and forth between tabs like you may have had to do in the past. Not suggesting that all of these tabs are ones that I would typically use in a draft, but definitely like seeing exactly where your picks are coming, how much you have available in slot for when you're making those selections, scouting recommendations, having several of them right in front of you instead of having to click one by one to see them. Also helpful. I really like having the mock draft in this format. You used to have to click to another tab to find it. Wish there was some way to search the mock draft by player name, even if it was just alphabetical order, because I do like to see where players are mocked sometimes when making decisions. If I'm in the third round and there's a player who's mocked in the third round and a player who's mocked in the fifth round, I'll typically take the guy who's mocked in the third round if I view them evenly, thinking that I can probably get the other guy in the fourth or fifth round. But having it all right here definitely makes it easier to go through and read. And I think this format is also better than the previous two-column format of the names. Was just kind of distracting to look at. So they're minor cosmetic changes, but I think that the changes to Draft Central here in OOTP 26 will improve the quality of life. So kudos to the programmers and developers at OOTP for making the changes. I think it's going to make the draft experience a little bit more immersive and a little bit more user-friendly, and both of those things are positive from where I am sitting. And one final thing that I noticed that I like, the mock draft is dynamic because most of the time this spring, Ethan Holiday has been projected to go to Washington with the first pick. In this mock draft here on draft day, they projected the college pitcher Jamie Arnold going to Washington. Now, unfortunately, they were wrong, and Washington has taken Ethan Holiday, who I consider by far the number one player in this draft. But I do like that the mock draft moves around a little bit. I would hope that maybe over time it gets a little bit more accurate as the media members and the experts and the prognosticators get perhaps better information from teams on what they're truly thinking, but it's not inconceivable that teams are feeding those guys bad tips and red herrings as well. So never going to use the mock draft to be 100% confident that a player is going to be available when I want them. But I do think directionally it does let you make some hopefully better decisions that stack the odds in your favor, as I talked about a little earlier. So with Holiday off the board, that leaves us with a lot of guys that I kind of feel even about. To me, Holiday, as I said, was the clear number one player, and I can't say that I've got an incredibly strong opinion about what to do here. Given that we're probably only going to be playing several seasons with these Los Angeles Angels before I move on to my long-term sim after the first couple of patches are out for OOTP 26, and I feel pretty confident that I know what I'm getting into with the game. Likely to be a little more inclined than I normally would be to pick college players, only because those college players might be able to help me for 2 or 3 or 4 seasons of this playthrough, whereas it's not inconceivable that even if I draft a high school player who becomes a superstar, only get a year or 2 out of them over the course of the number of seasons I expect to be playing here in Los Angeles. So 3 position players that stand out, at least according to our scout, and I'll talk about the recommendations from the Worldwide Scouting Department. I did put a very tight deadline on the Worldwide Scouting Department this time around. Normally like to give you 24 hours to opine on things like the draft and or the international amateur free agent period. But I'm so excited to get into OOTP 26 this year and keep playing that it's about a 13 or 14 hour turnaround this time as I'm recording this. So the first position player on my list, at least, is Lucas Franco. He didn't really get any attention from the Worldwide Scouting Department. Like the glove, average speed, average personality, and think the bat could be slightly above average. So as a left-handed player who could play some middle infield in positions as well as third base, think that there's some value with Franco, but not a guy that I am necessarily going to go after particularly hard. We'll look and see if we can see where Lucas Franco goes in the pool in the mock draft, and looks like he's a guy who lasts pretty long. So he might be a guy that we could come back and get in the second round if he is still there. I mentioned that it would be great to be able to kind of search this by player name in alphabetical order. You can see he goes 28th in the second round to Kansas City in the mock draft, so not necessarily good value taking him at number 1. So Franco, I don't see myself going with him here. Neither did anyone from the Worldwide Scouting Department. It would actually be fantastic, as I know the developers for OOTP sometimes watch these videos to hear what I'm thinking, and more importantly in the comments see what the community at large is thinking. I guess I would just suggest that being able to maybe sort by name on this mock draft would be useful, just so you can see exactly when players that you're interested in are projected to go, rather than the more manual way that I'm doing it. It's possible there's a less manual way to do it that I'm not familiar with, in which case I'm sure the commenters and the viewers will let me know about that. Maybe the other option would be to have something in the draft pool here where you've got the players' main statistics listed and maybe another column where it kind of shows where they go in the mock draft, although that defeats the purpose of all of this mock draft real estate over here. Something to think about, but again, I really do like this draft central here. Sean Gamble is a guy that I like a lot. He was also the recommendation of new Worldwide Scouting Department member Pep. Good contact hitter with above average gap power. Think his home run power and his eye could both be average if he meets his true potential. A little bit above average speed, decent bunter, solid defensively, and a lot of good personality traits. High leadership, loyalty, work ethic, and baseball IQ. Don't love the low adaptability, but certainly can live with it. Gamble, another left-handed hitting middle infielder / third baseman, similar to Franco. I think I lean towards Gamble, like the positive personality traits and like the fact that, at least in terms of his contact, he's got potential to be well above average in one of the 4 batting ratings, whereas Franco's pretty average everywhere with a pretty average personality. And as we talked about, Franco also projected to go late in the second round, so not as much value there. Jace Laviolette is one of the recommendations of Gilbert Gonzalez. I just have a problem with guys who strike out a ton and don't make a lot of contact. Agree with Gilbert that the potential home run power of Jace is incredible at this point, and the left-handed hitting outfielder very well could be a prime pick in the real draft in a few months in real time. Little below average in terms of his speed, not a great defensive outfielder, and at 21 years old as a college player, almost 22, not sure how much those things are going to improve. Back to Draft Central, Laviolette is expected to go 3rd overall to Seattle, so if we're going to get any chance of having him on board, now would be the time to pick him. But we can say something relatively similar with Sean Gamble also. He's projected to go 15th to Boston, so extremely unlikely that he will be on the board either the next time we are up to select. Turning to the pitchers, there are 3 who got some attention from the Worldwide Scouting Department. Jamie Arnold is probably the furthest along, the 21-year-old out of Florida State, recommended also by Gilbert Gonzalez. He is close to ready. You see his fastball, slider, curve, and changeup are all close to major league quality already. His stuff, movement, and control, not too far off major league quality. Solid stamina, solid at holding on runners, throws in the mid-90s, left-handed pitcher, could be contributing in the majors, certainly sometime in 2026 if his development went well. One concern for me on that development, though, is that he has low work ethic and says explicitly that he understands the basics but won't work hard enough to improve on them. So not the greatest personality in the world. But as we talked about earlier, he was projected to go 1st overall in the latest mock draft. So certainly if we want Jamie Arnold, now is the time to take him. Can say the same thing likely about Liam Doyle. Liam Doyle was the choice of Fuller Caleb, another guy whose stuff and movement are pretty close to major league quality. Got a little work to do on his control and his changeup, but could also have a nice 4-pitch arsenal. Little more stamina than Arnold, a more bland personality, but given that there were some negatives for Arnold, that's probably not the end of the world. Another lefty out of Coastal Carolina who could be helping us in the not-too-distant future, and Doyle has a little more velocity on his pitches than Arnold does. And then the last player to think about is a high school pitcher, Seth Hernandez, 19-year-old. If there was a consensus player from the Worldwide Scouting Department, it would be Seth Hernandez. Gilbert Gonzalez mentioned him, as did Coach 1549 and Quaitime. Seth Hernandez, certainly we think can have above average stuff and well above average control, a potential 3-pitch arsenal. We think the fastball and the changeup could both be outstanding. And he's a 19-year-old who's already throwing in the mid to high 90s, plenty of stamina, okay at holding on runners, looking for a lot of money. The big concern that I have with Hernandez is that He's got that low work ethic, poor work habits, set a bad example for his teammates. High school pitcher with a high ceiling, but high school pitchers, as much as I do like to draft them in OOTP, are certainly a volatile commodity. And an older high school pitcher who's already 19 years old with a low work ethic is about as volatile a commodity as you can get. That said, Hernandez does have the highest ceiling, according to our scout, of anybody out there, and certainly impressive for a high school pitcher to be touching 97 on the radar gun. And back to Draft Central, just to close the loop on the players that I had mentioned. I said that Doyle was due to come up soon, and he, in the mock draft, is projected to go 11th overall to the A's. Argument to maybe potentially wait a little bit longer on Seth Hernandez. He's projected to go 32nd overall to Milwaukee. Still a lot of picks between the 32nd pick, given all of the compensatory picks in this draft, and our second selection, which will be 47th overall. So although Seth Hernandez is not expected to go as high as some of the other players we've talked about, seems like if we want to bring him on board, now is the time to do it. And although I'm still very bitter that we didn't get a shot at Ethan Holiday, who, despite some negative personality traits in the game, is easily the highest ceiling player in this draft, comes down to three guys to me at this point. If I go with a position player, it's going to be the shortstop, Sean Gamble. I think he is a pretty clean prospect, solid defensively, solid speed. I think the bat, by virtue of that really good contact, can ultimately be a slightly above average major league bat. A lot of positive personality traits. Does have medium development risk, but a left-handed hitting middle infielder who's committed to a pretty big-time baseball school in Vanderbilt is an interesting option. If we want to get real wild, we go with the young high school pitcher Seth Hernandez. Has the highest ceiling of any pitcher left, according to our scout. Could be absolutely outstanding. Don't love a 19-year-old high school pitcher with a poor work ethic that we're going to need 3 or 4 years of really productive development to get close to reaching his ceiling. So that's what scares me off a little bit from Seth Hernandez, but there's also a part of me that says, hey, we're experimenting with OOTP 26, a low work ethic 19-year-old high school pitcher is something you would probably never draft, particularly with a team like the Angels where you've got very mediocre coaching right now, although I will be hopefully addressing that this offseason, as I said. But it could be, I don't think it's the right thing to do for this playthrough because, as I noted, by the time Hernandez is ready to pitch in the majors, I'll likely be moving on to my long-term sim. But it still could be an interesting learning experience to pick a player that I wouldn't normally go with. And the last guy that I'm considering is Jamie Arnold. I like him just a little bit better than Liam Doyle. His control is a little further along, which I like. Similar to the young pitcher, Seth Hernandez, I really don't like the low work ethic with Jamie Arnold, but do like the fact that he's basically got 4 borderline major league quality pitches at this point. If we upgrade our coaching this offseason, we can hopefully give him the best chances possible in terms of player development over the next couple seasons to try to reach that full potential. And as a 21-year-old who is much further along in terms of his current ratings than the other 2 people we talked about, he's actually someone who we might be able to use and benefit from him in this series before we move on to something else. $8.5 million slotted. We do have extra money now from some of the trades that we've made, but as we think about that, Seth Hernandez at 11.5, Jamie Arnold at 10.5, both well above slot. Sean Gamble with a $7 million demand would be the most financially reasonable for us to go after. And while I'd like to learn something about high school pitchers with low work ethic, it's not inconceivable that I can pick a high school pitcher with low work ethic in a third or fourth round rather than taking a flyer on Seth Hernandez with the first round and a guy who's looking for $3 million over slot. So although he was the most popular with the worldwide scouting department, the fact that I'm also likely to never really be playing with Hernandez at the major league level in this playthrough does work against him a little bit. Doesn't mean, though, that I'm going to be completely logical, because Sean Gamble is a 19-year-old shortstop, is also a guy that's unlikely I'll be playing with until the last year or two of this playthrough. But I think there is some small chance that a more established college pitcher, likely not Doyle or Arnold or even Evan Crest, to be honest, but I think a more established college pitcher could sneak to us in the second round. I don't think a Seth Hernandez sneaks to us in the second round, but I think there will be some interesting high school pitchers available then. So we are going to go with Mr. Sean Gamble. Bonus demand a little bit under slot, which is positive for us. We're going to go ahead and meet his demand. The shortstop, Sean Gamble, is our first pick. And a little bit of a error here. It says that we selected Sean Gamble with the third pick of the first round. Seems like just a little minor error that hopefully OOTP will be ironing out. And we'll now auto draft to our second round pick. I'm guessing that we're going to see a lot of the names that we were talking about coming off the board very quickly. And we did see a lot of the names that we were talking about coming off the board. But interestingly, Evan Crest, a college pitcher that we didn't talk about in this episode. We did talk about him in last episode. Another guy with a lot of negative personality traits, but another guy who's pretty close to being able to help us at the major league level right now is still in the draft pool. So that's interesting. We'll check in. Laviolette went third as expected. Liam Doyle and Jamie Arnold, the college pitchers, went back-to-back with the 8th and 9th selections. Seth Hernandez, high school pitcher, went 19th overall to Baltimore. Another high school pitcher, Miguel Sime Jr., really hard thrower from New York, went 20th overall. Caden Bodine, catcher who we had brought in and spent a lot of time with at the draft combine, went earlier than I think a lot of people anticipated. I believe he was a third-round pick in the draft, but he went 24th overall to Detroit. So we've got some decisions. Cameron Appenzeller, starting pitching prospect with a fantastic personality, high schooler, went right before our pick. But we will have some interesting decisions to make here in the second round. Looking through the mock draft, you can see a guy who was projected to go 12th overall, Reagan Ricken, still on the board. I do like this feature. It kind of lets you see if there might be some value. Now, I don't necessarily think that Reagan Ricken is that incredible of a prospect. Probably not someone I would have taken 12th. Shortstop Dean Curley, projected to go 19th. Solid defensively. A little bit of pop in the bat. Not a horrible prospect, but he's a 21-year-old who's not incredibly developed in terms of his contact and his gap power. Gavin Killen, another 21-year-old out of Louisville. Solid defensively, good speed. Doesn't look like much of a hitter to me. And you can see there's several others left, including the star of 24, Jack Bauer. Starting pitcher, looks best case scenario like a fourth or fifth starter at the major league level for the left-hander who apparently is attending the University of Virginia but is committed to Jacksonville University. Guess maybe there's some kind of UVA prep school or something that he's going at. Otherwise, perhaps OOTP has integrated NIL into the game. Would be kind of interesting if there's a NIL and a transfer portal that's in here, but I tend to think that is probably not the case. And looking at the ceilings of the pitchers who are available, Evan Crest certainly does stand out. As I mentioned, a lot of negative personality traits. Low leadership, low loyalty, low baseball IQ, high financial ambition. Positively, he does have high adaptability, and his work ethic is average at least. Not looking for a ton of money either. And he is a guy who you can make a case could be helping us in the majors in the not-too-distant future. So Evan Crest is certainly intriguing to me as a potential second-round pick. Taking a look at the batters, though, Lucas Franco, who is interesting to me as an infield prospect still out there, given that we did go with Gamble with a very similar profile in the first round. That makes me a little less excited to take Franco in the second. I think there's good value with Lucas, but I do think all else being equal, I'm probably going to lean towards drafting someone who's going to be able to help me in this playthrough. And if it comes down to a 21-year-old college pitcher at this point in the second round versus a 18-year-old high schooler, I may lean towards the college player. Check in on a few other guys that our scout likes. Left fielder Josiah Hartshorn, a little bit of home run pop in his bat. Competent corner outfielder. Mixed personality, like the high adaptability and work ethic. Don't like the low leadership and baseball IQ. Those are the four categories I care the most about. So +2 and -2 for the switch hitting outfielder. Starting pitcher Justin Lampkin, 21-year-old out of Texas A&M. Ooh, and he's got a tournament team. That's kind of cool. Potential 3-pitch arsenal. His fastball is nothing special. A little worried about his control. Certainly think I prefer Evan Crest over Justin Lampkin, as they both also have some personality quirks. Looking at the draft pipeline as well, and I believe this is a list of some of the players who were most popular at the draft combine. Braden Sloan. I don't know why I said it Sloan. I guess I was carrying the Braden to Sloan, but that's not the correct pronunciation. I'm pretty confident. Not all that exciting. 22-year-old, poor control, not much of a fastball, only 3 pitches. Definitely is a borderline starter. Brent Iredale, average-looking third base prospect with low baseball IQ, who's already out with a concussion. And I've spent a little bit of time offline trying to make a decision here. And I am going to go with the college starter, Evan Crest. I'm not going to claim that I think he's as good as the other college starters I talked about in the first round, Jamie Arnold and Liam Doyle. I like those guys a little bit more. Only a potential 3-pitch arsenal for Crest right now, and he certainly has some negative personality traits, although as we talked about, at least the work ethic is not negative and the adaptability is positive. But when I look at Arnold and Doyle going 9th and 8th in the draft, I think Crest here, particularly with his low demand, is solid value for us in the second round. He didn't go incredibly high in the mock draft. There's our old buddy Cruz Schoolcraft, projected to go 20th overall to the Phillies. And our buddy Lucas Franco, he we're talking about, projected to go 28th in this round. Crest, they say he's going to go 8th in the third round to Cincinnati in the mock, but as I noted, they also said that our buddy Caden Bodine was going to go 10th in the third round, and he was a first-round pick. Given that we're only going to be playing this playthrough for a few years, I'd like to try to bring on someone who might be able to help our beleaguered pitching staff in the not-too-distant future. I like Crest is another guy who's well under slot in case there's any interesting opportunities in later rounds. So we're going to go ahead and pick Evan here, meet his demand. And definitely he has something off. It always says that your pick is the one after you actually made the pick. I do like the confetti. I'm sure some of you find it silly, but I like being celebrated each time I make a pick. And as we get ready for the third round, this draft has broken really nicely to us. Lucas Franco still on the board. Definitely see him being in the mix here. Prominent name, Blake Ilitch, still around. Looks like a respectable starting pitching prospect. Hopefully for his sake he can end up in the Tigers organization. Don't love him. I believe Caleb Danzizen is a guy that I've looked at offline. I think he's got a great personality, if I remember. Yeah, high leadership, adaptability, work ethic, baseball IQ, low financial ambition, not really loyal. Looks like a decent hitting prospect, a decent outfield prospect in terms of his defense, not looking for a ton of money. Honestly, the profile is not all that different than Lucas Franco. Average to slightly average if he reaches his full potential, left-handed hitter. Franco, not as positive a personality, but I do like that Franco looks like he could be a pretty good defensive infielder. To me, that's a little more valuable than a above-average defensive corner outfielder. And there are still couple players who were expected to go in the first round left. We already talked about Jack Bauer. The lack of control, fly ball focus turns me off on him a little bit. Caleb Danzizen, we've talked about, great personality. Center fielder Kane Kepley, going to get on base decently with plus contact and plus eye if the UNC graduate, or I guess he's probably not a graduate since he's only a college junior, I guess more accurately, if the UNC product reaches his full potential, decent on-base guy with good speed and really good outfield potential. Not going to hit a lot of homers and unfortunately not going to drive a lot of balls into the gaps to take advantage of that speed and turn them into doubles and triples. I don't think I'd take Kepley here if he's still available in the fourth round, given our focus on college-age players who might be able to help us sooner. I think he'd be really good value there. Looking at the draft pipeline, few players who were among the 30 most popular still available. Starting pitcher Grayson Grinsell. Not all that interesting to me as a third-round pick. John Caston, another starting pitching prospect. Best case scenario is he's a average starter, and that includes development of that changeup, which can be tricky. And then Aiden Moffett, another starting pitching prospect, very mixed personality. Another guy dependent on that changeup and cutter developing to get a three-pitch arsenal, give him the best chance of potential success as a starter. I think we go with Lucas Franco here. Wouldn't hate it if Dan Zizin or Kane Kepley is still around in the fourth round, given that these guys were projected first-rounders. Probably being a little too hopeful with that. But we'll go ahead and take Franco. Just think for the whole package, he's a little more interesting to me, even though Dan Zizin's positive personality traits are certainly interesting. We'll offer slot to him, which is what he's looking for at this point. And I guess we don't get the little confetti after the first two rounds. And they still are, which I'm sure they've probably already heard about and are focusing on fixing, always one pick behind with the announcement that they make. So we'll move forward with the auto draft. See who is available. Dan Zizin is still around, which is positive. Does unfortunately look like Kepley is gone, but Dan Zizin is a potential first-round pick, is the only guy who was mocked in the first round who's still there. Top of the second, Cooper Fulbright. Got a lot of work to do. Low control, very poor changeup right now that you're reliant on becoming his third pitch. Does have some positive personality traits. I'll spend a little time offline looking to see if there's someone more interesting to me than Caleb to pick here in the fourth round. And I do like the value with Dan Zizin here in the fourth round. Not looking for a ton of money. The bat, if he really reaches his full potential, it's a borderline useful major league bat. Left-handed hitter, respectable outfielder, a lot of personality traits, good influence in the clubhouse. Got a lot of work to do, but I like him in terms of his upside more than any other hitting prospect who's still out there. And I think particularly with the fact that we're only going to be making our next pick a few picks from now, because this is a supplemental third-round pick for us, there's going to be some pretty interesting college pitchers still available a few picks from now. So we might be able to knock out a couple of college pitchers who can help us in the not-too-distant future, given that we do have the second, third-round pick here. So we're going to go with Dan Zizin. Meet his bonus demand. And, yeah, it says it was the first pick of the fourth round, when obviously it was the last pick of the third round. So I'm sure OOTP will be working on fixing that. Simming ahead just a few picks to our next pick. Going to spend a little time offline on some of those college pitchers that I talked about. Our old buddy Cruz Schoolcraft, he was a potential two-way guy that we took with the Oakland A's a year ago in our playthrough, and unfortunately Cruz did not develop particularly well as either a pitcher or a hitter. If I remember, as a hitter, I think his strikeout tendencies were fairly high. Yeah, it does look like avoid strikeouts could be an issue for him a year later as well. But Cruz Schoolcraft, who we made a very high pick as a potential two-way guy, fell to the fourth round here in 2025. And there are a number of interesting college pitching prospects out there, and I normally play with scouts that are highly favor tools. We do have a scout for this draft until I fire him this offseason, who favors ability. So I think that actually might help a little bit, kind of knowing realistically what the floors of some of these college players are. Seems like there's a large number of them that he knows pretty well, and there's some interesting options out there. So I think I am leaning towards going hard on some college pitchers in these middle rounds of the draft there, and hoping that maybe one or two of them ultimately hit for us and put us in a position where 2-3 years from now we've got a little bit more options on our pitching staff at the major league level than we do today. And with this 4th round pick, we're going to go with Ben Jacobs out of UCLA, a left-hander. Looks like a pretty average major league pitching profile if he does reach his full potential. Does have potential for a 4-pitch arsenal, solid stamina, solid at holding on runners, throws in the mid-90s, and a lot of positive personality traits. Don't think he is a superstar, but I do think that Ben Jacobs is an interesting guy to consider here with a 4th round pick. And I actually now understand why Ben Jacobs was around, because he's looking for a lot more money, $4.8 million, than his recommended slot. But fortunately for us, we do have leftover money right now, because we've saved a little bit with the first few picks that we've made. You can see we saved about $1.5 million with Sean Gamble, saved about $1.5 million with Evan Crest. So doesn't work out perfectly for us, since we've saved about $3 million, and he's going to be about $4 million over slot. But we did have extra money anyways, so we are going to go ahead and just meet Jacob's demand and bring him on board. And we're going to go with another college pitcher who may be able to help us in the not too distant future here in the 5th round. And I do realize with this focus on college players, we're potentially repeating some of the sins of the Angels organization. They've had a very low-rated farm system for many recent years, in part because they've tended, I believe, to go with college older players who may have higher floors but not quite as high ceilings. And I am repeating that in a way, going with a 3rd college pitcher here in the first 5 rounds of the draft. But I like Alton Davis II, another guy who looks like he could be a useful major leaguer. Not necessarily going to be great, but 5th rounder. I think there's decent value for a guy who throws in the mid-90s. Left-hander out of Alabama, but he's committed to Georgia. So I guess there is some type of embedded transfer portal or something in OOTP this year, which I guess does make it more realistic. Not sure exactly how that would look. He's looking for slot, so we're going to go ahead and meet his demand, bring Alton Davis Jr. on board. And the picks that we have specific slot amounts are made. I'm going to continue working through these next 15 rounds. If anyone interesting comes along, I'll certainly let you know. And in the 6th round, we're going to go with Masato Chilcutt, 18-year-old catcher committed to Central Oklahoma. Really like the glove. Pretty good speed for a catcher as well. Don't know about the bat, but if all works out well, plus contact and a plus eye, even though he's not going to have a ton of power, you combine that with a really interesting glove and decent speed, and I think you can make a case that he's a pretty useful backup catcher. Small, 5'9", $165, but like the value with Masato Chilcutt here in the 6th round. And interestingly, they have the right numbers now that we're in the 6th round. It does say that it was the 4th pick, so something slightly off in the programming there. And we're going to go with another defensive-oriented guy, this one a little bit older in the 7th round, Justin Thomas, center fielder out of Georgia. Don't really know about the bat. If he fully develops, it's a usable major league bat with decent speed and a very good outfield range. So a potential interesting utility outfielder who maybe can become a little more than that. Think for a 7th round pick, pretty interesting guy to bring on board. So we're going to draft Justin Thomas with the 4th pick of the 7th round. And the draft is over. I do like the kind of conciseness of the whole new Draft Central area, so think that worked out pretty well and appreciate the improvement there. Did end up going with a fair amount of college players, as you can see by the age of some of the players we were taking in the middle rounds. And then in the late rounds, we worked completely on just bringing in guys with good personalities, honestly great personalities in most cases, to hopefully start being a positive influence around our minor league system. We didn't spend a lot of time before we fired up the game on clearing out some of the negative personalities in our organization. We'll focus more on that next off season in a few months of game time. But just to show the types of guys that we were picking at the end of the draft, Jake Sapien. Wait. This is not our team. That's why these guys don't make sense to me. I don't know why Draft Central has defaulted to the team that was picking behind us. Hopefully that it appears that that's just another bug in the game. It seems like, as we saw, this is really weird because now the draft order is different. Maybe that's already kind of penciling in what next year would be. It does seem like there might be some issues with the Draft Central, though. We saw that the celebration of the picks were always one off, and now for some reason one behind us is what we are seeing after the draft here in Draft Central for our team. Fortunately, you can see the right guys here in terms of our draft pick negotiation screen, everyone else on our team. But as I was saying, we did bring in some experienced college players in the middle rounds, which is why some of those ages looked appropriate for me. But when got down to it in the later rounds, we were just focused, like round 16 through 20, on players with great personalities to hopefully be positive influences on the real prospects in the organization. But love that we ended up with both Gamble and Franco, as well as Dan Ziezen, another guy with decent potential and a good personality, and 3 college pitchers in Evan Crest, Ben Jacobs, and Alton Davis. Definitely would hope that in the next 2, 3, 4 seasons we're getting contributions from at least 2 of those pitchers at the major league level, and who knows, maybe one of them becomes a really good major league pitcher. If we get a good major league pitcher, an average major league pitcher, and a guy who doesn't contribute out of those 3 21-year-old college starting pitchers, I think that's a pretty good return for us. And with that, we'll call it an episode. Definitely like some of the enhancements to the draft this year. Hopefully the little buggy things will get ironed out. We're going to pivot over the next 3 weeks of game time to seeing if we can do anything in the trade market. Have gotten a lot of good suggestions on the Angels roster from Gilbert Gonzalez, who's a Angels expert and an Angels fan. He did suggest moving Luis Rengifo up front. If you look at the .262 batting average, I think that does make sense as a potential leadoff hitter. But unfortunately, at least in this world, Rengifo, not a good eye, and his on-base percentage is below 300. So for the time being, I think we're going to keep him in the 9 hole. Does have some speed, so when he does get on base, he's kind of a extra leadoff hitter ahead of some of the other guys. But Zach Neto with a 328 on base percentage, Taylor Ward with a 345 on base percentage, and then Nolan Shawnell with a 340 on base percentage ahead of Mike Trout. To me, are guys who, although they might not have the same speed as Rengifo overall, are at least doing a little bit better job getting on base. So going to keep the order as it is for the time being, but hopefully at some point in the not too distant future we'll be making some changes that will clear some money. If anybody wants Kikuchi, they can have him set to make $21 million for 2 more seasons after this one. This would be an incredibly important salary for us to get off the books. 3-11 with a 5.32 ERA this year. I will say in his defense, his 244 SIERA is 3 runs better than what he's doing in terms of his actual numbers. The 17 home runs that he's given up in 93 at-bats is just ridiculous, but he has been above a replacement level player, but certainly I don't think a $21 million player. And then we traded away Anderson to get that salary off the books. We got the veteran Justin Verlander back for nothing, as all of his salary was retained, but he has been brutal for us here with the Angels. 0-4 record with an 8.31 ERA. Another guy whose SIERA is much better, but clearly with those results, including 9 home runs allowed in just 26 innings, he's been below replacement level, and it looks like Verlander's career is coming to a ignominious conclusion here with the Los Angeles Angels in 2025. If you've got any thoughts on your experiences with some of the new draft features, what you would have done differently, what you would have done the same, always helpful to hear your thoughts down in the comments. And until our next episode, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.